And so I'll show you guys what I do to wash these consoles, the plastics. I'll just use warm water, some soap, and a rag, and a toothbrush, and yeah, well, you know the rest. So get in there the best you can with soapy water into all these vent holes with the toothbrush. Yeah, mostly all the vent holes and stuff. That's where the toothbrush is really going to help you. And then for the surfaces, I'll just use a wet soapy rag and a nice hand wash. That plastic will be clean as it's gonna get. Give it a nice rinse. I got a drying rack here behind you, drying mat. I have this is basically 2 Xbox cases, 1.5. There's another. It might be a Xenon even, another old console up there before HDMI. Use that for that. It is hard modded, and I can't remember if it was red ringed or not. It doesn't look like it's in any shape to turn on yet. It is an older one that I had wired up with an LPT connector, 25 pin parallel port printer connector. Printer cable is what we used to know them as. Alien technology to most people these days. That cable has not existed in a long time, and for good reason. That is an old clunky cable that not too many people will ever miss. So that's all the plastics. And there's your toothbrush. Any of these little fine spots. Toothbrush on right in there in the tray opening. Oh, I just splashed myself real good there. And with these outside covers, you can see how many holes are there. Toothbrush should make real quick work of getting those. And the last piece. This one I may have modded. Oh no, I think that's the factory. I used to, yeah, the other ones that I did, I notched this out and I put a serial connector there on the other end of that LPT cable. I had a custom cable that I made with a 9-pin serial port on the other end that I had on the mounted. I actually had to cut a little hole in the side of the chassis as well and mount a serial connector there so that when this was here I could plug into it. There was just enough space behind the DVD drive that I could connect it and read and write from the NAND with this custom cable that I made. It worked really well. I didn't have to disassemble the Xbox every time I wanted to read or write the NAND, which thankfully you can do most of that just through software. But in the early days and experimental days, it wasn't always that easy. So that chassis is all clean. This fan module, I removed that obviously before I submerged everything in water. I'll probably just, with a wet corner of a paper towel, get in there and actually just clean each of those fins, the housing, and well, you can pretty much make that fan like new again, depending on how much time you want to spend with it. Won't spend a whole lot. It's not taking it to the car show, but yeah, I want to do a good job of it because I probably won't be doing it again. If this thing comes back to life, it should have a nice clean bill of health, a nice clean housing. And although this fan module wasn't even very dirty, at least from looking at it when I began, you'll see, well, the paper towel, I mean, it's not filthy, but it's not going to wipe my fork with it. Off those part numbers, looks like brand new again. New old stock. So, while in my newer Xboxes, when I finally do hot rod those, maybe upgrade to like Noctua fans or do something silly, unnecessary, but just make one Xbox. Of all the ones that I have up there, I would like to take one to not obscene levels, but make it cool. Make it all it can be. That's kind of the plan for one of these Xboxes. The Xbox 360 was such a great generation. Xbox is best. Don't know that it'll ever be that good again, honestly. It was really fun. The modding days too, so those days are unfortunately mostly behind us, at least for like they were, has changed. Most of the mods these days is done through software, which is much easier. Kind of takes some of the fun out of it, I believe. I always liked a good hard mod. I'm gonna let those cases sit there and dry, just on this drying rack. Like I said, I have about 1.5 of them there. Actually, I'm missing some parts, so I'll go get the rest of the parts that I'm missing and clean those too. The shroud for the heat sink and fans is missing. I'm gonna clean that. So while I got my dirty dishwater here for Xboxes going, I'm gonna clean up the rest. And I'll see you guys while we put it all back together. So I got that shroud piece I was talking about, and actually got the DVD drive there too. So the DVD drive is, I'm obviously not going to soak it in the sink here, but I'll use that same paper towel that I was using for the fans to just give it a little wet. So now all those plastic pieces are basically as clean as new. And yeah, so this drive with the other side of this paper towel, I'll just get it just a little moist. Just give everything a good wipe. And yeah, this didn't have a security tab on it to prove that I was inside of here, but I can almost assure you that I have been inside of this DVD drive and flash the firmware. I might wash this button here separately since that does come off. And yeah. Might wash the tray after, but I probably will just power it up and eject it for that. In my original Xbox, I actually took it apart and greased all the cogs and the rails and cleaned everything inside of the drive. Actually, there's a video on my channel. Actually, I just did a restoration of the DVD drive in the original Xbox and the entire Xbox itself, but Specifically, I think I did a video of just the DVD drive. So I took it all apart and all of its mechanisms inside. There's quite a few moving parts inside of here. Not a lot, but enough that they do require some maintenance to last for, not ever, but last longer. You can apply new grease, lubricant to the belt and the gears, and yeah. I'm not going to go that far with this one because I got so many of them, and this one here is so old, and we'll see what kind of shape it's in. 2005 it says, November 2005, so there you go. There's my serial number and a model of the Hitachi from November 2005, which goes all the way back to the beginning. So like I said, this is vintage Xbox 360 stuff. So let's get it all put back together and see if it's improved. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and put this thing kind of back together, not fully, but because I'm gonna probably mod this thing. But I'd like to see if it is reliable before I go ahead and do any of that. So I would like to just kind of get it back to where, just to where it would be operating normally with proper cooling, with its things hooked up. In place. Like that. Just on the front. And hooked up to video. I only have it hooked up to composite video, so it looks terrible. This is a HD audio or video cable, so I could use component. I would just need to get in behind my receiver to do that. So for the purpose of this test, that's not needed, but if I were to ever use this, I would be using the component cables, because even for the testing, it's horribly ugly to look at on the screen. Okay, so let's see if this thing all still works. Everything is nice and clean. It's semi-reassembled. It has some new thermal paste on there since the last time that we booted it. That clamp, I also believe, is a lot tighter and better. So it turns on. Fans spin up. It should boot. As you can see, it is. It's probably too early to tell right now, but it sounds better inside. It hasn't spun up those fans near as fast. It sounds like a smooth running Xbox right now. Has the single center power light on, which is good. No errors. And I'm gonna let it run for probably, well, a couple of hours maybe even, to see that it can settle in, and if it doesn't spike in any thermals, that the fans don't increase, then I will call this a reliable Xbox. All these years later, since 2005. So almost, well, 20 years ago now. 20 years this year in November, as it says, at least for this DVD drive, that it'll be 20 years old and still running. Maybe better than ever. So we'll see. I'm going to let this thing run for a while. It feels like it spun up and started showing thermal. Oh, that is so much cooler. That was almost too hot to touch before. That is like barely even warm. Yeah, okay, so whatever we did there seems to have made a good difference, because that is a drastic change. And this Xbox sounds good, so it's running. I'm gonna go ahead and get a controller plugged into this thing and see what firmware and all that is on here, which dashboard revision this is. This is like a bit of a time capsule now. Yeah, I'm glad you guys were along for the ride, for those of you that were, because this was a fun one. So I'm gonna probably throw a mod in this thing, and I have some old mod chips and stuff down here. There's that cable I was telling you guys about. That's the 25 pin LPT to the serial connector that I had there. I had soldered in the resistors. Instead of having them on the motherboard, I had them in this cable. And then see, there's the one that I had notched out right there. So you can see there's the connector that's there. And I would be able to connect that cable to it, to an LPT connector on my old computer. This is like from the 90s, this computer and those hookups. And I was able to read and write to the NAND from that. I believe I have another one of these Xboxes has a similar setup on it. And then this one over here is the other half of that chassis that I washed. And as you can see, I have all those resistors in. I have a strain relief there, but I have these all wired down to the NAND points and around the motherboard to the different points that I was hooking up to with this old printer cable that I sacrificed to wire in directly to this Xbox motherboard. And that's how we used to mod these way back in the early days. So thankfully things have changed, but the spirit's still the same. I like the hard mods. Yeah, I have a bunch of old chips and stuff in here. All kinds of old, that was a JTAG programmer. All kinds of old tools and stuff that I have in here. There's my NAND X, I believe. I will be needing that. Yep, that's my NAND X. So that'll be the programmer that I can use to read and write from the NAND. And I think I have some cool runners in there too, which will be probably the glitch chip that I use for this. They're old ones, but I think they are still kind of what's used on this old revision of a Xenon Xbox. So yeah, join me in the next video. I should be able to, if this thing is still running by then, which it's hasn't spun up at all in thermals. That heatsink still feels barely more than room temperature. Yeah, I'm gonna call that a non-problem anymore. The spike in temperature was probably because of the clamp, possibly because of the shrouding, the extra thermal compound. There are 3 things that we improved here, but all 3 of them combined would have made improvements, and one of them was most likely our problem. So yeah, this Xbox is like new again. So I'm excited to get it put back together, or really even actually to take them back apart, throw a mod in it, and then put back together. And yeah, this is kind of a piece of Xbox history. We'll see what I do with this. This is kind of original right now. This is the first Xbox. So I don't want to go too far with it, since I have so many other Xboxes that I can experiment with down here. That we'll see. We'll see. This is kind of a piece of history now. This is the first Xbox 360. This would have been a day 1 launch console that I believe I purchased on that day. Lined up all night in the cold Canadian winter. And that was when we used to do the overnight thing, before pre-orders and all that were a thing. And I remember lining up all night in the quite cold November Canadian winter, and I believe this is the Xbox that I bought that next day. So to bring it back to life after all these years and all that time, and thinking it would never ever breathe again, is really gratifying. So I'm glad to hear it run right now and how well it seems to be performing. So yeah, this is a working Xbox. Well, I'll see you guys in the next video and on the next project. We'll see you later.